Thousands of lives lost on both sides. Women, men, children, the elderly, the differently abled. Nobody has been spared. Several displaced from their homes as well. Weapons of all kinds, including artificial intelligence, being used to fight each other. Many ceasefire attempts thwarted. And yet, there seems to be no closure to this devastating war anytime soon. Scenes in Israel are almost like a time machine, remnant of the terror and the anguish that has gripped the region. My colleague Rishabh has filed this ground report from Israel's kibbutz. Take a look.
We are here at a site that was attacked on 7th of October 2023 in southern Israel. On that day, this place was hustling, bustling, singing, dancing. What remains at the Nova Festival site is now the photographs in remembrance of people who died, people who have been taken hostage and haven't returned till date. After 6 months. 6 months, the site, which was that day a music festival, has become nothing more than or less than a graveyard. You can see the photographs all around this ground that remembers the people who were killed and the people who were kidnapped. What you're seeing on your screen is a wall of iron, steel, rust and tragedy. We are here at Car Cemetery, where all the cars that were attacked on October 7th were brought and kept. You can see the destroyed cars, and let's start from talking about this car. This was a family car where you can see the bullets being fired toward the lower end of the car, which means people might be hiding, children might be hiding, and they were attacked. This is one out of those 300 cars that were attacked, even burned. But these are the two vehicles that IDF tell us that belong to the militants who came into Israel from Gaza. You can see the machine gun loaded over the car. The machine gun has been removed, but the setup still remains. These two cars, for that matter, belong to the attackers, the militants who entered Israel on 7th of October. So, Adam, if I may ask, we are here at Car Cemetery. Tell us something about this. What's this? What's the motive behind this?
So what you see behind me is a wall of iron, steel, and rust, comprised of 300 cars that were completely burned to the shield, as you could see, by the acts of the terrorists and the atrocities committed on October 7th. What you see here is part of the result, or a piece of the puzzle of what's happened on October 7th. Terrorists who came deliberately to hurt civilians, they came with special formulas designed to increase the degree of the burning of the cars to such level that all the bodies of the Israelis inside of those vehicles will turn into ash.
In this very kibbutz, where the population was about 1,070, hundreds were killed while 30 were taken hostage. 6 months later, 11 of them still missing. This house belongs to 70-year-old Viviana, who was a Canadian Jew. This house was attacked, burned down. It took IDF at least a month to realize that Viviana has been killed and not taken hostage. After a thief was found in the room, after DNA, it was clear that she has been killed. 8th of April today, it's been 180 days since the war began. The war still continues, while the Israeli soldiers have started vacating areas in Gaza. But what is left is devastation, both here in Israel as well as on the Gaza Strip. Here in Israel, Rishabh for Times Network.
Now, even as the war completes 6 months, with Prime Minister Netanyahu reiterating that there will be no let-up, new truce talks were held in Cairo. But Netanyahu told his cabinet that there will be no ceasefire without the return of hostages. Now, with pressure building up at home and globally, the question is, how far can Israel fight this war? Let me take this across to my guests on the show. General Dhruv Katoch, Director, India Foundation, is joining us. Pathikrit Payne, Geo-Political Analyst, is also joining us on Nation Tonight. Good evening. All right. Pathikrit, namaskar. Good evening. We will, of course, have General Katoch in a short while from now. But Pathikrit, 6 months into this war, there were truce talks that were held in Cairo. But what is coming off it is the fact that nothing came out of these truce talks yet again. How do you see this, really?
Unfortunate, but I also don't think that the Israelis will ever have any kind of truce with the Hamas. But if you look at it, Shreya, in the larger context, what happened on October 7th, it did give Israel the right to retaliate. But every conflict and battle has a shelf life. If you continue beyond that, it starts becoming counterproductive. It has its fatigue element which creeps in. And that is exactly what is happening in case of Israel now. There are 2-3 reasons for that. Number one, people beyond a point will not like it. It's a progressive economy. It does impact the entire, the economic metrics of the region. Secondly, there is a limitation to how many conflicts simultaneously Israel can fight. What happened in Damascus and the potential possibility of Iran also directly coming in and not anymore through the proxies, it has a dangerous ramification. Last but not the least, can Israel afford to entirely sour its relation with some of the progressive Arab states of the region, including UAE or Jordan or Saudi Arabia? Because eventually Israel was very much willing to be part of the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. Now, as things stand today, I think any kind of future corridor absolutely goes for a toss. So let's understand, Israel, I may not know this, but I'm sure, I hope the Israeli government knows what is their end game in mind. If the end game is completely to decimate Gaza and annihilate everybody, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think they're going to replace Hamas with an Israeli government over there. If they are expecting that everyone will cross over from Rafah into Egypt, that's also not going to happen. So what is their end game? What is the deadline? That is a question mark. And if they're hoping and desperately trying for Europe, for United States to get into the war directly, if the Iranians come in and attack, then it's a very, very dangerous situation. And from where it will be some kind of a point of no return.
Would they want that? General Katoch, the troops, IDF troops, have withdrawn from southern Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu has made it clear that this does not mean that there will be any ceasefire or an end to the war. How do you see this? And how long can Israel, do you think, afford to extend this war?
Thank you, Shreya. Shreya, I think the question has to be reframed in a slightly different manner. Can Israel afford to stop fighting till such time as its prisoners are still there with the Hamas? Now, that is something which is going to be unacceptable to the people of Israel and to the government of Israel. So unless there is some sort of a deal as far as the prisoners are concerned, I do not see actually the war ending. No government in Israel can actually afford to say, okay, we will stop this war and let the prisoners remain as they are. So that is point one.
But General Katoch, he's also facing pressure domestically. There are protests happening in Israel against Prime Minister Netanyahu to stop this war. How long can he go on with it?
But imagine
globally, he's been facing and he's been retorting to the statements coming from different countries. But domestically?
No, I agree. Domestically, there is a problem, but that problem, I think the government of Israel can handle. The question is, if you have a ceasefire and they go in for some sort of a truce without the prisoners coming back, that is going to be a situation which is going to be far more complicated for Israel. They can't afford that. Having said that, I think the time has really come now for them to look at other means. I think the world needs to pressurize both Israel and Hamas. It cannot be a one-sided pressure to stop the war. Hamas has to be told to give back the prisoners, and Israel will have to be told, once the prisoners are back, there will be a ceasefire. I think that is the only way in which it is going to happen. Otherwise, in some form, this conflict will continue. Now, regarding withdrawal from southern Gaza, that is all right. That doesn't really matter. I don't think the Israelis were interested in really taking hold of that territory. They are still very firmly ensconced in the north, and a lateral road has also been constructed there to facilitate the supply of troops and to cut off the Hamas from that region. So, in my view, while the conflict may reduce in intensity for some time, I do not see an end in the immediate future. Shreya.
Which is interesting that you say, General Katoch, that the intensity of the conflict might reduce for some time, because that is one of the big concerns, Pathikrit, that, after this Damascus strike, Iran has been saying that we'll respond, and there are concerns that this might now intensify and spread across the region.
Well, it has already spread. The Houthis are directly involved in the war. Hezbollah is involved. Let me tell you two things. I think General Katoch is right. And I agree with him, and I said the same thing. Truce is not a possibility. The question is, if there is a third-party mediation, there can be some exchange of prisoners. But neither Hamas will stop plotting the next terror attack, nor Israel will entirely give up, entirely the fight against Hamas. The issue is this. Today, Israel has withdrawn the troops, but their artillery shelling and drone attacks or use of aerial firepower, that will continue. They are anticipating a major attack from Iran, and I think some kind of messaging also has gone for United States, especially in the election year, where it is becoming extremely difficult for United States president to sell the idea that whatever Israel is doing is absolutely justified. So I'm saying, from the perspective of politics, it does create problem. Yes, the potential possibility of Iran directly doing something, I think that's one of the reasons they have withdrawn the troops, because troop casualty, as well as the fact that people are protesting there primarily because they want the prisoners out, not as much as that the war should entirely end. War or animosity from either side is not going to end, but the collateral damage is becoming so very profound in the future for Iran to get any kind of support from other Arab states to continue it with its business momentum. I think beyond the point is going to be challenging, even for the die-hard Israeli supporters from other countries, especially countries I'm saying. They might abstain in United Nations voting against Israel on any resolution. But I think some messaging is being sent secretly that, listen, you have to tone down when it comes to civilian casualty. Nobody is saying that Hamas should be spared. But the issue of collateral damage is becoming unsustainable, even for very strong allies of Israel to actually support. I think something has to be done to bring that down.
There's something interesting that Donald Trump has said recently, that Israel is not doing a very good PR about this war. With allies turning against it in the middle of the war, it's not really doing good PR. But General Katoch, let me get you in on the role that United States has played over the past 6 months in this war. It started off with, of course, being on a certain position in this war. Now it's sort of saying that Israel shouldn't be doing it, and that they should tone down. Do you think it has been a ripple effect of the intensity of the war, or has US just played around what helps it domestically and internationally, that role of a mediator between the two?
Very frankly, I think as far as US policy is concerned, the policy is not dictated by the president as far as Israel is concerned, whether it is President Biden or President Trump. The policy is dictated by the very strong Jewish lobby within the United States, and they will continue to support Israel. These noises may keep coming from various quarters. Okay, what is happening is a violation of human rights and Israel must tone down. But in real terms, I don't see the United States actually reducing its aid in any form to Israel. That is not happening on the ground, and that is unlikely to happen again. Because the US also realizes that if they lose Israel, which is a possibility, if they don't get the support, they may lose Israel, then their entire foothold in the Arab world is lost. So they're not going to let that point go. That is one. Number two, election seasons are on in the United States, so obviously there are many lobbies there, and there is a very strong lobby which is also fighting to end the war. I think both the Democrats and the Republicans are playing to that gallery also. But in real terms, as far as Israel is concerned, I don't see any major action being done by the United States. However, I think an important point can be done if when the US puts pressure both on Israel and Iran, that listen, this conflict should not widen. And I think that is a real fear, which Mr. Payne also pointed out, a conflict widening between Israel and Iran. And then I don't foresee the end, you see, because the oil fields get impacted. It becomes a total sort of war in that particular region. So that is something which needs to be avoided at all costs, especially as far as India is concerned, because then our economic interests are directly impacted. So when we look at the West Asian the energy scene, I think both India and China would not want the situation to go beyond the present stage. Perhaps everybody is looking for it to tone down so that we can carry on life as normal. But an immediate end, as I gave you, Shreya, in my opening remarks, I very frankly, I don't see that happening as of now.
Okay, Pathikrit, you wanted to make a point. Please go ahead. Also, the fact that I want to ask you is that, will we see more Arab countries now coming out in support of Palestine as was expected earlier?
Well, first of all, of course, there is support for Palestine from many of the Arab states, no doubt. There are deep animosity between Iran and the Arab states. There is a sectarian division between the Shia and Sunni. But if a war breaks out and Iran directly gets involved, then it will be very difficult for Arab states to take a stand against Iran. That's number one. That's very clear. Secondly, I don't know how much leeway the Americans have with Iran, given the fact that the sanctions that they have imposed on Iran by completely throwing them out of the oil market, and that's one of the biggest predicaments that Iran has, because of which it keeps on using proxies to create problems for the rest of the world and rest of the countries in the region. I think something has to be done, because even for countries like India, it's not just about Israel fighting a war. This war and conflict has been going on for 50 years. It's not going to, nobody is saying that there will be a complete ceasefire and people will hug each other. But something has to be done to tone it down, for the simple reason, because it is impacting a lot in many perspectives, in many aspects, including the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, on which India has hedged a lot. That is not going to happen unless something is done on this issue. The Haifa port, where the Adanis have a huge investment, is very near to the whole region of conflict. I mean, which country will beyond the point say that let the conflicts continue, it doesn't matter to me anymore? Because in a globalized environment, it's all interlinked. The cost of oil price will increase insurmountably if Iran goes in. And there's a very high chance, there are intelligence inputs that Iran can use Shahed drones and ballistic missiles. That is not a good news for anybody, including Israel.
All right, we'll leave it there. Of course, war doesn't help anybody. So let's hope this does end sometime soon. Major General Dhruv Katoch and Pathikrit Payne, thank you very much to both of you gentlemen for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your perspective. Thank you. Namaskar.